Yanqing is one of the best single target damage dealers in the game. He's also one of the easiest to build wrong. I'm going to tell you in this video how to properly build him and how to orient your team around him. I know he's an older character, so you might have seen him before and you might have seen some guides, but I have a couple of things I want to say as I've been playing him since his release and have a couple of eidolons on him. With the release of characters like Yukong, a lot of individuals may want to slide her on over to Yanqing, and this is actually the wrong way to pair him with. Instead, Yukong would be better fit for somebody like Zila or any other character. Tingyun is the better fit for Yanqing specifically because he gives himself so much crit. In most content, Yanqing is going to be paired with a DPS, a healer, and then a shielder. In this instance, it's Japard. As of right now, I have Tingyun and Yukong in the team as well, just to show you the differences between the two. Without either one of their buffs, Yanqing is merely getting the 10% bonus from Yukong's E1. Subsequently, he only has 34% crit rate and 127% crit damage. This is without anything active. Adding in Tingyun's buff, it immediately switches up Yanqing to have over 3,000 attack. This is a dramatic improvement to his damage, and the speed increase after his bonus or after his ultimate is beneficial as well. If we're using Yukong again, then what we run into is him having a diminishing return on the attack percent. Now it's almost 4,000 attack. It really isn't worthwhile for him at this point in time to build more attack. After Tingyun or after Yukong, that is it. Now, as you see here, Yanqing has a shield, he has the attack bonus, he has the benediction bonus, which is attack and then speed after ultimate, and then he has speed. All of this is in one before he uses any of his current abilities. So, as of right now, we're going to start off just by using his elemental skill, or his skill, however you choose to say it. Because of that, Yanqing's stat has improved to 53-155. This is because he has Soul Steel Sync, which is 20% crit rate, alongside almost 30% crit damage and effect resistance increased by 20%. You're starting to see where the issue may come in at. If we use Yukong's buff, now we enter into a state where Yanqing has 80% crit rate, 210% crit damage. On the surface, this seems perfectly fine. 80-100 is a perfect ratio. However, Yanqing then gives himself 60%. This means that 40% crit rate is overcapped, completely wasted, and the additional 45% crit damage is nice. The problem you run into though is, once again, at a certain point, you're at essentially 140 crit rate to 255 crit damage. It's not worthwhile. A 1-to-2 ratio is what most people aim for, and the critical rate gained by Yukong isn't beneficial to him anymore, strictly because he's overcapping and reaching that point of diminishing returns. And now he has a 42% damage increase. What I want to emphasize here is that yes, supports are beneficial to characters like Yanqing, but attack-based supports are more beneficial than any crit-based support. So Yukong, if you were looking at her, is more beneficial to a Zealot or legitimately any other character because Yanqing will overcap on that crit rate. The crit damage is nice, but it's not nearly as nice as it would be on a character who actually needs it. That's the case with building him. What would you ideally want to do otherwise? Well, you have two options. Eidolons don't affect him. I have E2. His E2 just gives him additional energy, and his E1 just gives him additional damage when the enemy's frozen. None of the enemies there were frozen, so you can ignore that. His traces, although beneficial, are just nice on top. They don't assist in the damage department. Ideally, you'd want the attack traces first and foremost. I don't even have all of them. His light cone is nice, but once again, that overcapping problem does come to a head when you're dealing with something like this, as in he gets the 16% at base, and then the additional 16% when he defeats an enemy. The attack isn't beneficial to him, but something like Zila's light cone instead give a basic skill attack and ultimate damage bonus. This is extremely nice as the crit rate is pretty close to the cruising and SLCs. The bonuses, however, are much less restrictive and instead much more beneficial to his overall kits. Alongside this, you have River's Flow and Spring. This is a light cone you can get from the shop if you are able to, but I haven't gotten lucky. I've only gotten 4, and that's throughout being AR 62, or essentially Trailblaze level 62. The same applies here. The attack is beneficial, but the crit rate can assist in overcapping. Instead, I'd ideally recommend something like this. Subscribe for more, which if you haven't already, continue to do so. That's enough about that. What about relics? Well, I'm going to be blunt here. You have a few options. For characters who ascend and get so much crit in their kit, Space Sealing Station is a legitimately good option because 24% attack is much more beneficial than something like 8% crit. Instead, if you're looking at his relic set, the 25% crit damage sounds nice on the surface, and don't get me wrong, it is. The problem you went into though is that 25% crit damage is arguably less beneficial than additional attack from Space Sealing Station or from something like a Musketeer set. If you're someone like me and you like full sets, this is perfectly fine to get. You're not missing out on much. But if you were to go with something like this, the problem you run into here is that the 12% attack can once again be oversaturated. If you're dealing with something like Space Sealing Station from here, you get 24% attack, as you see with my Tingyun. Then on top of that 24%, you get 12% from Musketeers, 36% attack. On top of that, if you're running him with Ting Yun, you get Ting Yun's attack, which as you saw there was almost a grand total of 2,000 attack, making him nearly 3,000 attack. Mind you, 3,000 attack without Space Healing Station, without Musketeers. So what would you want to run him for set-wise and stat-wise? Well, on boots, you'd ideally want to go for attack, and that sounds odd, but he has nice high space speed, and he gets additional 10% speed here. So instead, what you're looking for is attack percent boots, as my Yanqing has, and you didn't see he didn't have any issues. He has 113 speed, additional, that's about 122, 23-ish. And then you're going for a crit damage body piece because he gives himself so much crit rate once again, along with ice damage boost. If you're looking at my set here, Vanwalk isn't necessarily too bad, and I'm trying to see if this is a worthwhile option for him because of his E2 giving him additional energy. Maybe he's meant to spam more bursts. But ideally, I would recommend something like Space Healing Station, Inert South Soto if you really need that additional crit, or Vanwalk if you want to go for burst spamming. Space Healing Station is your top priority, but as you see here, I don't have any further ice damage bonus pieces. Now what about team compositions? Well, let's be honest here. Yanqing is a character who is incredibly dependent on maintaining that Soul Steel Sync uptime, meaning he needs to shield. Your shielding options are Japard, Fire MC, or March 7th. If you have E1, March 7th is going to be an extremely good option along with Japard just for freezing enemies. So, with that in mind, let's say hypothetically you're building him out for long-term usage. I'm going to recommend you a team that's good for E1 all the way up to E6. For raw power, this is a perfect team. However, I understand 2 5-stars and a pretty good 4-star may leave your secondary team a little bit lackluster, so let's talk. Instead, you can swap out Ting Yun for a healer. Natasha works great, but March 7th is actually really good as well. Once again, this is almost a mono cryo team. In this instance, you have Pela here for freezing. You have March 7th here for freezing as well, and shooting alongside the cleanse, and Japard is here to keep everyone alive. But hypothetically, you don't have a Pela. Maybe if you went for Silver Wolf, you can. You want to have 1 slot saved for any form of debuffing or buffing potential. This could be a Ting Yun, this could be a Pela, or an agility unit like Silver Wolf. Any point in time, this slot here is meant to be your damage bonus. And the reason I'm setting up my team like this is because Yanqing doesn't want to be hit. Your preservation units are the most likely to be attacked, alongside abundance. So ideally you would want to place your buffer next to Yanqing and your 2 healing units on the right hand side, away from him. This means that if any splash damage is given to your abundance unit, it hits the 2 units who don't really care that much about it, as opposed to your DPS who damage is so inherently dependent on him not being hit, it's almost ridiculous. Is he a worthwhile damage healer? Yes. Is he relatively easy to farm for? Yes, he has a bunch of options. As a hunt character, he's meant to be single target. Is his technique worth using? Yes, actually it is. What are his problems then? Well, his over-reliance on a shield means that his damage is so dependent on him being protected that it makes you either invest into a shooter you're not going to use, like March 7th or Fire MC, or almost requires you to have a Japard built. That's downside 1. Downside 2 is, yes, his Eidolons are nice to have, but none of them are dependent or really damage bonuses unless he's freezing an enemy. So as a result, if you get E1, if you get E2 or beyond, you're in a position to where his Eidolons don't really mean that much for him, at least as of yet. With the inherent amount of crit he has built into his kit, it makes him very difficult to build out because you don't want to overcap on crit rate. Think like Blizzard Strayer in Genshin Impact. It's a good set to have and a good set to have, but it does make it a bit harder to get artifact sets, arguably enough. The crit rate is so much and so high that any additional crit roll makes you feel like it's less valuable because it could have otherwise been used on legitimately any other character. I do hope you use him. He's a great character in my opinion, and honestly is one of the best ones to use early game just because of his ease of use and his ease of building. It saves you a lot on stamina. Either way, if you enjoyed, leave a like down below, consider subscribing and heading to the Discord server, and I will see you next time.